Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shae Invidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. Today's episode is a little different, and so I wanted to give you the heads up. I recently went live on Instagram to discuss my thoughts on the human trafficking film, Sound of Freedom. Because this topic is so important, I wanted to bring the conversation to you here on the podcast so you could tune in and also easily share this conversation with your community. Make sure to leave a comment or drop any questions you have, as I will continue to shed light as things progress. I am still in Portugal right now, but there has been so much talk. I've received so many questions and DMs that it's time to go live. I'll say this as a disclaimer. There are a lot of question marks that I personally have around this film. And being that I'm in Portugal, it's not released here, and it came out July 4th, and I've been in Portugal since then. So I actually have not seen the film yet. I am going to see it when I get back to Canada, which is going to be later this week. And then I will do a follow-up on my thoughts on the totality of the film. But there's enough going on. There's enough to address. And so let's do it. Let's dive in. So if we have not met, if you don't know who I am, my name is Shae Invidiata, and I am also the founder of Free Them, which is a nonprofit organization that fights human trafficking in Canada and also abroad. I founded that organization in 2010. So this January coming up will be 14 years that we have been around. And my journey in fighting human trafficking started actually in 2003. I was thinking about this the other day. It has literally been 20 years. So a long time, to the point when I first started, there really wasn't this word known of human trafficking. It was not being discussed. In fact, when I first saw what I did, and many people asked me, how did I get involved? I was going to university in Hawaii in the States, and I actually saw human trafficking happening firsthand. But at the time, I did not realize that there was this word called human trafficking. I was describing what that word meant. Being exploited, coerced, lured, living off of the avails, being forced to do something that you didn't want to do, or that you were told one thing and now you are forced to do something else. That is a whole other discussion. So happy to have that at some point. And if you would like to know more about just even my own journey, and the work that Free Them has done, you can go to freedom.ca, because this is not what this live is about. I really want to talk about the film. But just to give you some really high level context. So Free Them, we focus on all things to do with preventative measures to fight human trafficking. And so that is the education, the awareness, speaking engagements, speaking in high schools, doing fundraisers, bringing community together. And one of the biggest component that Free Them has worked on over the past 10 years is this element of legislation. And so we are actually we're stakeholders to the federal government of Canada, the provincial government of Ontario, the municipal government of Toronto. And we have helped to back and help see bills get tabled in the House of Commons. And we have amended the criminal code in Canada 3 times in supporting a member of parliament who put forward the bill. So it's not Freedom's bill, but we supported it and we were stakeholder on these bills. So we have done and seen a lot when it comes to government, the upward hill battle. That's also another huge discussion as to why it really was an upward hill battle over the last 10 years in some of the work that we have done. At the time, Canada didn't have a national strategy to fight human trafficking, so we helped to get that implemented into Canada as well, which the current government is trying to overturn that and defund that, which, knowing what we know now and everything we've seen over the past few years, I have even more questions. I mean, I actually have less questions. I see more, and it becomes obvious to me, but I think for you hearing this, it's important to know as a Canadian that our own government, the current government, is actually not in support of these efforts. And so let's first dismantle the film. This has been so interesting because years ago, this isn't a new idea with Tim Ballard and The Sound of Freedom. He has been talking about creating this film for about 5 years, I believe it is. I remember hearing it years ago, way before COVID, that he was going to come up with this film. I personally was really excited because it's an awareness piece and we need more people to know what is going on when it comes to human trafficking. Because if you have even the slightest knowledge, most people think that it's happening in Thailand, it's happening in Vietnam, it is happening in other second and third world countries. And to think that it would happen in Canada or the United States, there's this really big misconception that it's happening over there. Meanwhile, it is happening right here at home. By here, I mean Canada and the United States. I mean, it's happening in Portugal as well. But first, people have been saying that human trafficking in itself is a conspiracy. And I think many people are quick to see through at least that one. But I wanted to put some critical thinking around it. So for those who are saying, like the media, saying that this is a conspiracy, mainstream media, I mean, they were in supportive of Tim Ballard and his work years ago, and now they're saying this is all a conspiracy. When you look at the Canadian government that has implemented legislation, we in Canada have a National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, which is February 22nd in our country. That took forever for us to implement, but we have it now. In the United States, the States has a whole month. The month of January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month federally in the US. And every year, the United States is responsible for putting out what's called TIPS, the Trafficking in Persons Report, where they analyze every single country on their efforts to fight and combat human trafficking. So they look at what are the legislations in place, prosecutions, are they making arrests? Do they have funding? And depending on where that country is, based on all of these different criterias, you are ranked and you are put into a tier as to where you are globally in comparison to other countries. So it's not a conspiracy. The governments acknowledge it's there. They've put some funding, not enough, but they have allocated funds to human trafficking. So all you have to do is just kind of go and look what is the government's doing in the most basic form to realize this is real. It is happening. And when we first started Freedom in 2010, the stats was globally that there was 27 million people in some form of slavery worldwide, all around the globe. Today, if you do your research, you can go to the UN's website. Never mind Tim Ballard, and because that all is being smeared right now, but you can go to the UN. It is over 40 million people that are in some form of slavery globally today. That for me, even that alone should cause enough for all of us to question if we know better, if we're aware of human trafficking and that it's happening, whether it's in forced labor, sexual exploitation, there's things like debt bondage, chattel labor, organ trafficking, which is so distraught. And thankfully, like in Canada, the United States, that's not as prevalent. But it is so horrific where literally women are impregnated for the sole reason to give birth, to have their babies taken and sold for the purpose of harvesting their organs and selling them on the black market. So you have all of these different forms of human trafficking. And you would think that as we're educating governments, media, law enforcement around the world year after year, shouldn't that number be decreasing and declining? Yet it hasn't. Over a 10-year period, it has drastically increased from that 27 million to over 40 million. So it's something that I have questioned for a while. And over the past 2 years, I have known a lot of stuff. If you just do your own research as to what goes on in Haiti, between Haiti and organizations in the United States, from major politicians who are involved there, you really start to see things that you wish that you didn't. I wish that were not reality, and around people that you would not think are involved that are actually involved. So 2020 and forward really affirmed for me a lot of things that I had been digging up. And we look at this film, let me backtrack a little bit. I want to just share one other statistic because this is also crazy. So 350,000 migrant children have crossed the border since 2021, and 85,000 are missing. And the United States is saying they don't know where they've gone. There are close to 800,000 American children that go missing every year in the United States, and they go missing. And I am 2,000% convinced that if they have not found the child, if they have not found the body, if they ever find them, they will find them in a situation of human trafficking, knowing what I know now. The amount of money that can be made off of one victim can bring in over $300,000 a year to that pimp, to that trafficker. And that is huge, huge money. And so right now in the United States, there's over 300,000 victims that domestically get trafficked every year. In Canada, over 90% of all victims in Canada are Canadian. And again, when I started our conversation earlier, I said people think that this is a problem that happens overseas, that is happening in second and third world countries. And it is. That is true. But in Canada and the United States, this is a homegrown problem. And we are also bringing in across the borders from the South into the United States. And it is really, really important that before even looking at this film and going, okay, because there's a lot. Like I said, I am still trying to wrap my head around some of this. What I think this film is really great and powerful in what it is doing, it is bringing instantly this conversation around human trafficking that is so needed. Like I said, I've been doing this fight for 20 years. Free Them turns, 2024 will be 14 years that we have been doing this in Canada. And it has been an upward hill battle. And so I am grateful that this has come out. And what I want to say is don't miss the truth that is being exposed because you're caught up in their darkness. I don't necessarily think that this film is as innocent as it should be from who's behind it and who's involved. And you would hope, you would pray that somebody who's putting forth something like this is really in it to rescue children and to fight human trafficking and to bring pimps and traffickers to justice. So I'm urging you, I'm encouraging you, don't miss the truth about human trafficking because of being caught up in the other darkness. See the truth. Be discerning, ask questions, ask more questions, and also do your own research. And as you see evil, shine the light on the situation. And this is an opportunity for us to know more so we can do better and not let them win, not have this doom and gloom that like, oh my God, something else that we thought was great is actually gone sideways and is actually bad. And I want to say this to you guys as well before I start talking about the film. What man intends for evil, God uses for good and is able to use it for good. And that's what I look at when I look at this film, is that there is an agenda here. It is so clear. There's an agenda behind this film, even the timing. Why now? Like I mentioned earlier, the film was supposed to be released and they were talking about doing this film way before COVID. And why did it come out 2 years past or into, however you want to look at it? I personally don't believe we're at all out and over of COVID. I believe that the hors d'oeuvres have just been served and that the main course hasn't even come out yet. And we are about to see so much more coming down the pipeline. So you have to ask, why now? So, okay, I've put down some notes here. So if you kind of see me looking down, I wanted to make sure I got out some key thoughts of mine that I have on this film. So there is a couple red flags for me, and I'm going to continue to do my own research. I'm going to continue to follow the leads. So the film has come out, Human Trafficking, and it's #1 in box office, beat Indiana Jones. Disney didn't want to pick it up. They went and got private funding through Angel Studios, who said that they would do this film. Goes into theaters, and maybe you guys have seen the different TikToks and Instagram videos where people have been going all across the United States and their tickets have been canceled, or they went to the theater and they were still showing the film, but there's no AC in that specific theater, making people think that they're not wanting us now to see this film. They've released it and they don't want us to see it because it's gotten too much traction, it's gotten too much awareness, and maybe the higher up are trying to now pull back, going, they didn't think that it was going to be that great of a success. Guys, this is my thought. You can come up with your own, but this is my thought. The theaters that this movie has been in has not been mom and pop's theaters. Although I'm sure that is the case with the film has gone into mom and pop independent theaters. So much of this has been in Cineplex theaters and AMC theaters that are literally in like bed. They are in cahoots with Disney, the production studios, with Hollywood. Like it's all intertwined. The fact that they decided to and agreed to showing the film and then having this happen, it makes you wonder. For me, I look at it, I think it's just a distraction. I think it's a distraction to make us think that they don't want us to see what's going on. Yet, I think they're the ones that orchestrated this little gimmick. So move past that for me, they allowed for the film to come, and now they're the ones that are also putting the AC out to make it uncomfortable for people to be in the theaters and hoping that you now don't go see it, and they're wanting you to think, oh, they don't want us to see it. They don't want us to see this truth. They don't want us to see the reality. What is the bigger agenda? There's a lot of talk around microchipping your children, and this is a way to combat human trafficking if we now chip our children. Guys, you guys have watched movies. How many times when somebody has a chip in their neck, in their stomach, in their arm, in the movies, all they do is they scan them and they remove the chip. So no different. Like if your kid has a chip in you and they've actually been taken by a trafficker or a pimp, you don't think that they're going to have some type of device to locate where the chip has been implanted? The chip is not going to be the solution to save your child from being trafficked or save a victim, or save a person, I should say, from falling victim to being trafficked. So again, it's like, well, what is the bigger? They're wanting to instill fear. There's a lot of truth with this film, but it's instilling fear that you're going to need to chip your child. When that is just what? Handing them over the control. You are losing body autonomy, over yourself, over your children. And again, outsourcing your trust and having the government completely be in control of your children. And I mean, I have zero place in tolerance for that. So that's some of my thoughts on where I think this film could be used to lead the agenda. Some of the other struggles I have, and I have said this from day one, if you have been hanging out with me since 2020, I have talked about follow the money. It leads to the truth every single time. Follow the money and you will learn the agenda. Follow the money. And I watched in this interview, and I've watched it so many times, trying to find it in different sources to make sure that this isn't fabricated. And I have to say, I'm very struggling with the fact that Tim Ballard comes on, I think it was in his interview with Fox, and he is point blank asked, how did this movie get funded and how's it getting made? And his response is Carlos Slim is one of the main funders. And he shares on in the interview that Carlos Slim is one of the richest men in the world. And from 2010 to 2013, Slim was ranked as the richest person in the world by Forbes Business Magazine. He has done many different deals and partnerships and alliances with people like the Clinton family. He's given over $100 million to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He is known for telecom in Mexico, but he's also known for a lot of other not legitimate stuff that you can go do your own research on and you can go find it. And when you look at the Clintons, you look at Bill Gates, especially Bill Gates in the last 2 years, many people have come to see the truth about really how evil he is. Point blank, I will say it. He is one of the most evil humans I think I have seen in my lifetime. And you are the average of who you hang out with, the 5 people you hang out most with. And you cannot tell me that accepting funding from Carlos Slim, for me, it's like accepting money from the devil. Like, why would you accept money from him to fund this film? It's really an oxymoron when you start digging and you start seeing everything that he has funded, he's partnered with, he's allied with. It doesn't make sense. So that for me is the biggest red flag of the authenticity now of Tim Ballard. Has it always been like this? I don't know. I have been following Tim Ballard for years, literally years, a decade, really. Because, we've seen his work, and I really commended him for leaving Homeland Security, CIA. I had a very different impression of the CIA 7 years ago versus now. Literally the shit I know now. Oh my God. And that alone, his coming from his background and stepping into this, I question that. I also question that he's still alive because he's making a huge disruption in this space and he's still alive. So it's either a super strong miracle, very possible. Again, what man intends for evil, God is able to use for good. Who knows? He could be extremely protected. In the meantime, I believe God is actually using his work to wake people up and to show people that human trafficking is happening, that children are being raped 10 to 15 times a day and sold day in and day out. The average age of entry in Canada and the United States is 13 years old, 13, 14 years old, which means there's also so many that are so much younger than that to have that average age being as low as it is. But I really struggle with how do you take money? And we all know, guys, we know. Well, you should know. The money is the control mechanism. The money is the power. In politics, if you fund a campaign, that politician is literally bound to that funder. You want something done, that politician will do what you have paid for them to be in that seat, in that position. This is no different. So I really struggle with that. And there's been so many other things that are starting to come out around him being connected to Freemasons. I haven't done enough work with that. If that is true, like that for me is like throwing in the towel. Freemasons are so evil and horrific. It's one of the oldest standing cults in the world that have done all kinds of satanic, horrific rituals to children all over the world. And so if he's at all involved, then my heart like breaks, literally breaks. So I want this film. I want this to be an opportunity. And then this is what I pray for, is that this would open people's eyes to seeing the truth through this story of human trafficking, and be discerning enough to understand that there's still evil that is at play here. And there is another agenda, and to not fall for that. And we need to be seeing what's happening in our world. So to become empowered and not fearful, to become empowered and not afraid, like when you can start to see like, wow, this is the tactic, this is what they are going to be doing, it becomes obvious. Don't chip your children. Don't chip yourself. They are going to use it to control, and eventually the social credit system that's going to come out, the digital ID, all this stuff. The goal is for you to own nothing and to be happy. And there's an element of that where you're going to have to become fully reliant and dependent on them. Sick enough, poor enough, afraid enough, weak enough, and handing over your body to be tracked by them as if we're not tracked enough. Like, holy crap, we're not tracked enough. Like, come on. I don't know about this. Anybody who knows more on this, what I'm about to share, I would love for you to send me a DM, and I would like to dig into this further. I have heard that through the Sound of Freedom, and Tim Ballard is going to be partnering up with Apple to actually roll out a microchip implanting program that is going to be free. And again, there's nothing free in life. The jab, the shot that was offered for free, number one, is all through our tax dollars. And we're paying for that now, and the future generations are going to be paying for that. None of that is free. But it also comes at such a bigger cost around your own health, your livelihood, body autonomy, freedom of movement, freedom of speech. And I cannot imagine somebody like Tim Ballard fighting for freedom, partnering up with something that would be the complete opposite of that. So stay tuned for more. Like I said, I have heard this. I haven't been able to find my own concrete research on this. So if you have heard about this, I would love for you to reach out to me, and share with me what you have learned. I'll say this as well too. Some people have said, if you want to learn about human trafficking, don't go watch the movie because you're putting money in their pocket. Like, go speak to a survivor of human trafficking. Two thoughts on that. Number one, how are you supposed to find a survivor of human trafficking unless they have decided to share publicly their story, and they have created an Instagram account or a TikTok account where they are being vocal, they're sharing their story? If not, you're not going to find, there's very few survivors that I know personally that are really even wanting to share their story, not because they're ashamed of it, but because in order to really heal and move past what has happened to them, every time you talk about your story, it can be like reopening a wound. And there is sometimes the process of actually re-victimizing a victim by asking questions and asking them to tell their story over and over again. This isn't the case with every victim at all, but it is very common feedback that I have received from the survivors we have worked with over the years. And so even just think of yourself Imagine walking down the street and a stranger you don't know coming up to you and saying, hey, can you tell me about the darkest time of your life, the hardest time of your life, the most painful time of your life, the most traumatic time of your life? Could you just share that with me? I have some questions about that. Like, so unrealistic, so rude, so invasive. And so some of the videos I've seen where that has become the solution to learning about human trafficking, that's not a solution. That can be a way, but film is a powerful way to tell a story. Film is a powerful way to reach a wide audience. And so I'm not mad about The Sound of Freedom showing a film about human trafficking. I think it's important. And once upon a time, me and one of the survivors actually that we work with, and she's a very dear friend of mine, we thought about creating a film because it was the same thing. It was like, we're doing these one-to-one, going to one school and educating, going to doing one event. We're going to one university. We're going to one conference and speaking. It's like, what if we created a film that could reach a huge audience? And so I'm not mad at that. The other thing is people are saying, you're putting money in their pockets. You're funding them. Literally, guys, money is an illusion to people like you and me who are not the billionaires and millionaires, multi-millionaires of the world. We believe that we need to earn money in order to live, in order to eat, to have shelter. And that is the game that they have orchestrated for us. And therefore, you and I, we do need to do that. But as you have seen over the past few years, when there's no money left or when there's no cash left, they just print it. This isn't about the money. You heard this film is being funded by one of the largest billionaires, wealthiest billionaires in the world. You really think that this film is going to change his bank account? Not at all. He is an investor in the film, so he is going to receive some of that profit, but it's not about the money. So even that, it's like, that is an illusion. And if you think going to this film is going to, going or not going to with the money, for me, like that is just, you're missing the point. Really, for me, you're missing the point. One other thing I want to say, and then I'm going to hop off of this, and I see so many of you, somebody had said talking about the CIA trafficking children, such a huge conversation. You're not wrong. Definitely involved. And like one of my dear, he doesn't know me, but I hold him near and dear to my heart. RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., who says, can you say it was the CIA per se or people involved in the CIA? I don't really know. I kind of blanket it all over. But what I can tell you is there is so much horrific stuff happening between the CIA, the foster care system, child services in the States, and the whole issue about human trafficking. That is a whole other video for a different day. But Dominic, thank you for bringing that up. And I know this is really hard. One of my other friends, she's on here going, this is really, really hard to digest, in hearing all of this. And it is. And that's why I said before, I don't want people to feel doomed because of learning about the other side, and that maybe not all of this is goodness and light, but there is a lot of truth in this. And in the end, good always wins. Good always prevails. God is not done here yet. And so we need to hold the line. We need to see the truth, and we need to continue to speak truth and be light. And I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but in the end, we win. In the end, we win. So let me say one more thing. Let me try to dry up my eyes. Mel Gibson is putting out a film, possibly this fall, that is going to be exposing child sex trafficking that's happening in Hollywood. This, for me, doesn't make sense. Guys, if you do your own homework and you do your own research, many before Mel have started to expose what's going on in Hollywood, what's going on amongst powerful people, which we're calling the elites, which again, people want to dismiss it and say, oh, if you say elites are involved, it's conspiracy theory. Go do your homework way before COVID. Look at different presidents that have been involved in all kinds of different fraudulent behaviors and sexual scandals and, different faith groups that are abusing young children. These are all people like at the top. This is nothing new. You can look at all kinds of a plethora of politicians in Canada and the United States who have been charged with sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape, all kinds. So it is so naive and foolish to think that this would not be happening where the power is and where the money is. It is happening. And there have been other actors in Hollywood that have gotten really close and have even told people on their websites, on videos saying, I am happy. I'm not suicidal. I'm not depressed. And they're coming for me because of what I'm talking about. And they are going to I'm going to expose them and will probably be taken out for this. And if you look at different actors over the years, this has happened. They have been what I call murdered by suicide. So again, circling back to even Tim Ballard, how has he been able to really make the dent that he has over these years with having nothing happen to him? That's a question mark. Mel Gibson, another huge one. If this man makes it through alive, you have to ask, how? Why will Mel be able to live and show the film that he's wanting to make? And yet other people who weren't making a film, they were just going to start exposing. Why did they get clipped? Why did they get murdered? So, and Mel has a funny history too. After he made Passion of the Christ, the man went rogue. He had some really effed up stuff that happened. He was in a really young relationship as well, which is so inappropriate in my opinion. Borderline grooming. You can go do your own research on that. And he is also connected in some not great places. And apparently he's also part of Freemasons. So I'm going to leave it there because I feel like this could go down this whole other avenue. And I really actually wanted to just keep this to 30 minutes. And now we're almost at 40 minutes. Catherine, thank you so much for your comment. I see you, beautiful woman. So thank you. And for all of you guys tuning in, I think it's so important that we think. They are doing everything to make us afraid to ask questions and to think. The cancel culture, never in our lifetime have we ever seen anything like this, where you ask a question. You're not even necessarily an opposing thought, but you ask a question and you get completely canceled. So don't be afraid to ask questions and then ask more questions. And that's my biggest one is if Mel Gibson comes out with this film, for me, it's connected because there's such an agenda here. And so I'm going to continue this conversation going. Those are my thoughts right now. I'm going to do a round 2 after I see the film with my mom. We're going to go this week when I get back. And in the meantime, if you have questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your feedback. Share with me. I know it can be hard. So share with me how you're feeling and just, again, stay in the light, shine your light, don't dim it. And remember, in the end, we win. In the end, good prevails. In the end, God wins. And it's not over yet. So sending you guys so much love from Portugal, and we'll chat with you soon. Ciao. Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, pop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shae Invidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.